Devotees here in Houston, those that have some technology savvy came to the rescue because I left my computer back at the ashram. But fortunately, here we are with the topic. This topic was a request from a group of students from Boston, mainly from Brandeis, but from Northeastern and MIT and some other places in Boston. This was their topic. They had some brainstorming and they wanted this topic, and so here we are. Why is life difficult? How do I learn to be happy? So now, most of you know what this image is. And for those of you that are older folks, you may not know. This is Matrix. I didn't see the movie, but many young people have seen the movie. Have you seen the movie? Okay. Yeah, okay. You saw the movie too. Matrix, okay. So some question is asked. I don't know what the question is. And the response was, do you want the reality pill or the illusion pill? They said, of course, I want the reality pill. So we're going to do the reality pill about why is life difficult. And as you see here, there's a pyramid, or you can say a triangle with 3 triangles on the outside and 1 on the middle. And I like to think of this as a holistic picture of who we are. Holistic spelled with an H, not a W. So the inside, that's the spiritual entity. And that's at the heart of everything. And that spiritual entity has coverings. So the holistic picture is we consider happiness in terms of the holistic picture. But the foundation of mental, intellectual, and bodily happiness is our spiritual eye in the middle. That's the spirit soul. And with spiritual well-being, material well-being follows like a shadow. A shadow follows the object that casts the shadow. Yes? If you try to move the shadow without moving the object that's casting the shadow isn't going to move. So we want spiritual well-being. We want spiritual happiness. There's a problem. We've forgotten who we are. We're covered by Maya. That's a nice picture of Maya. And Maya moves everything in this material world orchestrated by the 3 modes. If you look at the center of this nice painting, you'll see Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the 3 guna avatars, the 3 forms of expansions of the original person, Krishna Adi Purusha, expands as these 3 personalities who preside over the 3 modes of material nature, which are intrinsic to how Maya works. Maya, that's that female figure there. She's the illusory energy, and Maya's got us covered. That's with the body, the mental and the intellectual parts of life are moved by the modes of nature. It covers who we really are. We still are, but who we really are is covered, and that's the reality pill. The reality pill is we're not finding happiness. Why is life difficult? Because we're covered by illusion. Sounds pretty simple, just dispel illusion. In the morning classes at the temple, we're discussing some you're probably all familiar with Bhagavad Gita, at least by name, and the contents you're becoming familiar with probably. In addition to Bhagavad Gita, there's a passage, a long section in the Bhagavatam where Krishna is speaking to another friend. Arjuna is his friend. Uddhava is also his friend. So it's Uddhava Gita. And you get the picture. There's the donkey and the carrot. A conditioned soul undergoes great trouble to obtain a little happiness after struggling in material life, which is full of hardship and hypocrisy. One may receive a little sense gratification. Notice that carrot is really small. And the little happiness is what keeps people going. It's not really happiness. It's flickering, means it's temporary. It's not eternal, it's temporary. Happiness, sensation, the sense gratification. And it's very limited. It's little. So time and space, very little. And even more substantially, it's illusory. It's not only now you see it, now you don't, but it's a reflection of the real thing. There is a real thing. There is real happiness. And it's not in the reflection of the real thing. Real easy one. Supposing you hold up an apple in your hand, and in your other hand you have a mirror. And you can look at the reflection of the apple in the mirror and say, that's an apple. But there's no substance in the reflection of the apple in the mirror. You can't get any nourishment from the reflection of the apple in the mirror because it's insubstantial. You can from the real apple, but not from the reflection of the apple. So similarly, this sense gratification, that carrot in front of the donkey, it looks like happiness. And there is something that someone experiences, just like you see something in that apple reflected in the mirror, but there's no substance to it. Besides, it's limited and temporary. It's insubstantial. Or in the Sanskrit language, it's asat. It cannot. It never has. It is not at the present, and never in the future will it bring happiness, what real happiness is. The reflection is never going to become an apple. Here's another verse that we discussed in our morning class, this Uddhava Gita. There's an artistic depiction of a forest. Looks like it's during the fall season, all the leaves fell off. And down in the lower left, you see a sword. And there's a purpose for the sword in this verse. The network of material desires is created when one falsely thinks that he can establish himself permanently in the material world. No way. This binding network should be cut by the sword of detachment. That's the reality pill. The sword of detachment. Otherwise, one will be forced to wander in the illusory network of Maya with no understanding of the liberated life on the spiritual platform. Now, the reason all these letters are messed up is because this isn't my computer. And somebody else's computer is reading it the way that it's reading it, but at least you can get a sense. So this is from Uddhava Gita. We need that sword down there in the lower left, the sword of detachment. And detachment is made possible by knowledge. Let's back up. Some of you know something about Buddhism. I know, just a little on a personal note, because starting in 2010, I started visiting China. It's a long story, but I went to China. And I've been going there since. And because I go to China, I hear a lot of people say, I'm Buddhist. And when I ask them, what is your understanding of Buddhism, I don't get a clear picture. It's kind of like what the sky has been like in Houston the last few days, really cloudy. And a little bit rainy and stormy sometimes, but not clear. So because of that, I wanted to find out something more about Buddhism. What is it? I mean, what is it really? Not what people say it is. So, very simply, one of the core, essential, foundational teachings of Buddhism is the root cause of suffering is desire, and the way to overcome suffering is stop desire. And the way to stop desire is you become a Buddhist, and you do meditation, and you do things that are aimed at one target: stop desiring. And when you stop desiring, then you become free from suffering. And then the goal beyond stop suffering is, the phrase, mindfulness. It's a buzz in our American culture today. Mindfulness, right? The mindful manager, the mindful burger. I crossed a place in downtown Chicago. That was the big sign. The mindful burger. It's a catchphrase. It's a marketing phrase. But people in the corporate world told me they have a mandatory mindful manager course if you're in an administrative position. The mindful manager. So it's known. The phrase is known. Where does it come from? It comes from Buddhism. And what's the purpose of mindfulness? To be in the moment. Because a Buddhist teaching says all there is the moment. The past is gone, the future hasn't happened, all there is the moment. So be in the moment. Be in the moment. There we go. And what happens when you're really good at it? You can just be in the moment. You're mindful. Listen, you go on the other side of the moment. What's on the other side of the moment? Nothing, or nothingness, nirvana, or void. That's the goal. The goal of Buddhism is nirvana. And there's some steps. So now, the teaching of the Vedas is different. Listen carefully. The teaching of the Vedas is what you see on the screen here. The teaching of the Vedas is the root cause of suffering is ignorance. Ignorance influences desire that's of the soul into ignorant desire. It's a covering. Ignorant desire is a covering. Desire is not the problem. Ignorance is the problem. That's the root cause of suffering. And from ignorant desire comes ignorant activity, comes suffering. So the way to become free from suffering is to remove ignorance. You see that sword in this image. Get rid of that binding network of material existence. I'll read it again. The network of material desires, not desires, but material desires, is created when one falsely thinks that he can establish himself permanently in the material world. And we're souls, we're permanently existing, but the soul doesn't permanently exist in the material world. If we try to make the material world a permanent place of happiness, oh, that's foolish. And it creates a whole network of material desires. This binding network should be cut by the sword of detachment, or you can say knowledge, because knowledge brings detachment. Say the same thing in a different way. Supposing there's light and there's darkness, which is stronger? Light or darkness? Pretty simple. Light is stronger. Darkness can't stand where there's light. So which is stronger? Ignorance or knowledge? Knowledge is stronger. Knowledge destroys ignorance. And when ignorance is destroyed, that picture we saw before of Maya and the three modes, poof. It's like a phantom that just poof. No, it doesn't happen so quickly like poof, but it's eliminated. The influence of ignorance on the soul, so that there's ignorant desire, and thus ignorant desire makes a whole network of material existence. With the sword of knowledge or detachment, then the soul becomes uncovered, and then real happiness is discovered. That's the reality pill from the Matrix story. And that's right there in the Bhagavatam, although it doesn't have the reality and illusion picture. There we go. Here's one more verse. Material desire, we're still on the material desire. Not desire, but material desire. Material desire is undoubtedly the cause of the greatest unhappiness, and freedom from such desire is the cause of the greatest. No, it's not on my screen, but I think it's happiness. Notice there's a bird cage on the left, and then notice the bird is out of the cage. So what's that last at the bottom? Because it doesn't show on your little mobile phone there. What does it say?
Material desire
Let me
is
know.
undoubtedly the cause.
So the bird is flying towards Krishna, and the cage door is open. The cage is that material desire cage. Happiness, that's it? Okay. So back to the starting point question. Why is life difficult? It's difficult because we're in this cage, or in the prison, or in the illusory space of seeking fulfillment of desire in an ignorant way. And that root of ignorance, guess what the root of ignorance is? The root of ignorance is ignoring Krishna. It's really simple. There's the sun, and you're looking at the sun, and what do you see? You see light. B, you turn your back to the sun, what do you see? Shadow. Just turn your attention to the light, and the shadow is gone. I mean, it's behind you, it's still existing, but it's not covering your vision. It's not covering your happiness. It's not covering your desires such that they're ignorant and causing ignorant activity and causing suffering and difficulty. Really simple. Turn toward the light, turn towards Krishna, and the difficulty subside. That turning toward Krishna is what yoga is. That's the principle. A liberated person This is straight from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5. A liberated person is not attracted to material sense pleasure, but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. In this way, the self-realized person enjoys unlimited happiness, for he concentrates on the Supreme. That's the outcome of what we've been discussing. That's what real happiness is. Real happiness isn't phantom-like. Now you see it, now you don't. Illusory, limited in time, and limited in quantity. Like the happiness of sense gratification. It's not like that. It's sustainable, it's natural, it's already there, it just needs to be awakened. And that's the liberated position. So to strive for happiness, strive for being connected with who you really are. Remember that image in the pyramid image. The holistic part, happiness commonly is thought of in terms of physical, or the senses contenting sense objects, whatever that object is, the tongue or the eye or the touch or the smell or the taste. Happiness. Now, for the liberated soul, they also have senses, but what their senses contact is in relation to Krishna, or in relation to the source of everything. Say it conversely. Supposing that connection with the source of everything is covered by Maya, then the senses are still going to act and perceive something and interpret it as happiness because you're in Maya, because of ignorance. And it's difficult. Real happiness, real contentment is not there. And whatever is experienced is the difficulty. Looks like, but it isn't. And then we go from one expectation to the other expectation to the other expectation, just like a donkey chasing the carrot. The carrot's on a stick, dangling in front of his nose, and every time he takes a step towards the carrot is still the same distance away. Happiness never happens. Think about it. There's the anticipation of happiness. But when is real happiness? On the physical plane. Or we'll go to the mental plane. It's now you see it, now you don't. We all know the flickering mind, and now and then the next moment is something else. And the next moment is something else, and it's ever changing. There's not a position of what real happiness is. Real happiness is permanent, not impermanent, and a reflection of the real thing. And intelligence. We like to use our intelligence to discern things and discriminate things and to understand this is this and that is that. And, it's valued in this world, have an IQ. What does IQ do? It just discerns one thing from another thing. That's what intelligence does. And the real intelligence is to understand who you are and what illusion is, what you aren't. And you're just fixed in who you are. And you smile as you see the world moving under what you aren't, or what people think they are, but they aren't. So there's the holistic picture of satisfaction. Here's from Bhagavad Gita, nice explanation of happiness within. I'll read it slowly. See the self by the pure mind, and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses established. Thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from miseries arising from material contact. So remember the starting point. Why is life difficult? Due to material contact and the consciousness of trying to be the enjoyer of that matter. And then the configuration of matter changes, and our senses change, and time moves everything, and it becomes chaotic. There's a life of misery doesn't change. It's temporary. And then another picture, and then another picture. So the idea of real happiness, as you see in the image here, this is a young boy. It's actually Narada in his previous life. It's an illustration from that part of Narada's life, where he saw the Supreme Lord within. He saw himself as a spirit soul, that little skinny guy we saw at the very beginning in the pyramid picture. And then their Supreme Soul is also within. And Narada saw it, and he never departed from that position. Greed is an obstacle because we see resources of nature as opportunities for bringing those objects to our senses and find happiness. So one could say gluttony, but greed. And it's not very kind to Mother Nature, and it's not very kind to the greedy person either. What to speak of other persons who are also greedy and wishing they had what you have, and all of that difficulty. Just using the word from the beginning. So recently, April 22nd of every year is Earth Day. This is an image because this presentation was made to the college group from Boston on Earth Day. Earth Day is meant to give honor and respect and proper dignity and treatment to Mother Earth. So we respect Mother Earth, not exploit Mother Earth. The resources of nature are there to be utilized as they've been given to us for service to the source of those material resources, to Krishna. And as a foundation, this is the last slide, by the way, as the foundation for all of this consciousness, we have given to us within the Vedic text this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And I imagine many of you who are part of this Friday evening gathering, you're doing some chanting. Encourage you sincerely. Could you fix this? Someone else want to join? Okay. The Maha Mantra pictured here is to clear two things. Clear that covering of ignorance, Chaita Darpana Marjanam in Sanskrit. Cleanse the mirror of the mind, that reflecting space, that the mind. The mind is like a mirror. I've used that example of an apple in the mirror. So the mind is like a mirror, and it reflects what's around us. It's not what's around us. There's an impression in the mind, and that's what we're trying to enjoy, the impression within the mind through the senses reaching out to the sense objects. So that tendency is cleansed. by this chanting. It's the first experience of chanting. Those who sincerely take to this chanting process, that tendency is diminished, eventually cleansed away. And the second is it awakens a happiness, that real happiness that's within. And those who sincerely chant, I've had many exchanges with persons who have begun chanting and find it like that. There's a contentment that is very satisfying. It's a contentment that we want. Now, it takes time for it to become fixed and steady in that stage of spiritual practice where contentment is always within. But that's response back to the first question. Why is life difficult? And how can I find real happiness? What to do? So these are some very simple thoughts on that topic. And I don't know how the procedure is. We're going to have some people. You have an MC? If you have questions, you can send into the chat box and we'll read them out. Or, I guess alternatively, you can unmute yourself and you can speak. Sarvabhauma, are you going to MC all this, or are we going to do it right here?
Yeah, I could ask a question. It seems like that the mindfulness process of Buddhism regulates the senses.
Well, we're getting our technology together. I'll invite those in the room who would like to speak something, discuss something. You can, yeah. Srungatakar, you can take the microphone around for now.
Can you hear me, Maha?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, thank you for the nice lecture. So earlier in one of the slides, you were describing how the freedom from material desires brings you the greatest happiness.
Yeah.
And so how do you set your mind away from those material desires? Because however hard we try, we always end up back chasing those material desires.
Yes, I've noticed. Two things. Practice, abhyasa yoga yuktena chetasananyagamino. Abhyasa. We practice withdrawing the mind. That's over there is the unhealthy, and this is the healthy. So when I'm cultivating health from a disease, I refrain from the disease and engage in healthy. In your practice, just doing the healthy. And then the other is direct consciousness, or direct the mind towards Sat. Quite simple. Quite simple. I mean, in principle, it's simple. Then we have to practice the simple. So you know, because you've been, you've lived a life as a young devotee. So you know that which is Krishna connection kinds of things. And that you know which ones help you. Let me share something. I just heard from some young person that they, just today, they learned that they have a certain type of cancer. And and they're freaked out. And they're told, it's at a certain type and a certain stage that the medical treatment should work, percentage-wise, should work, and in 6 months we'll know. Of course, there's always remission possibilities, but so that's like a splash of, there's a shock. It's not just a splash of cold water in the face. It's a shock. And their circle of people that know about this, they're going to help her through it. So that's the unpleasantness. Now, yours specifically is the allure for the happiness, but the allure for this is part of recognizing what's out there, and you draw it back because what's out there isn't what happiness is. It's not what happiness is, although it looked like it. So we've been discussing this for maybe 2 months, month and a half at least. This Uddhava Gita section is over and over and over. So you read it. That's knowledge can help with detachment. Knowledge can help with detachment, but it's not sufficient. Knowledge can help with detachment. And then the other is attachment to Krishna, bhakti. So that's the answer to your question. It's going to continue to be a disturbance. And it gets like nauseating. Let me off this Ferris wheel. Knowledge and detachment and bhakti. So diminishing over here and increasing over there. Or diminishing over there and increasing over here. That's what we do. We cultivate abhyasa. On the refraining side, with knowledge, and the cultivation of bhakti side. And it's not just the behaviors of bhakti, but it's the heart of bhakti. And it's a process. I was sharing this in one class, and Radhakrishna said, I really liked that part. Said, this is not an event. Once upon a time, I surrendered to Krishna. It was really nice. It's an ongoing process of bhakti, dedication. And if you become complacent, then you the bungee cord goes back into the material attraction. So it takes the practice of submission, and then eventually, it becomes spontaneous. But that's the recommendation. Practice bhakti according to the regulations that are encouraged for us. And I just heard Prabhupada say this morning. He was giving a class in Vrindavan. We have to come to the stage of going even beyond the regulations into the spontaneous realm. We cultivate it, with the appropriate manner and appropriate time and stage of devotion. And then the allure it's illusion. It subsides. The phantom stops spooking you. Gradually, it diminishes. You have something? We have our little protocols here.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Remove the mask so I can hear you better. Then you can put your mask back on. Thanks.
Hare Krishna.
There we go. Much better.
So Gita says, do your duties without expectations.
Yeah.
The fundamental tenet of Gita is do your duties. So
Yes.
Is there a relationship between age and spirituality? Like
Age?
When you are young, you do your duties and you go through the duties, and eventually when you think of Krishna, eventually at the right time he'll come to you. Is that so?
That's a myth.
So the world would require people to do their duties also, is it or not?
Yeah. But what's the duty of your mother? It's not the same as the son. At different stages, you have different duties. At a younger age, it's whatever it is, to do your studies. And then it, etc. So our duties may change, but the principle doesn't.
So essentially, you do your duties and just forget. when Krishna-
Yeah, let us be clear about what duty means.
Yeah.
We have a body and have a mind and an intelligence. We have a covering of the soul. And there's a nature, a psycho-physical nature. The subtle body and the gross body have a certain nature. So a young person, I mean, depending on what age you say young person, but let's say study for the later stages of life. So that's their duty. There's other duties, obeying, etc., respecting, etc. So there's age-specific or psychophysical natures, but as the body grows, then psychophysical nature changes. So that the duty changes according to the stage of life, but the principle doesn't change. The principle of you have the right to perform karman evadikaraste ma paleshu kadashana from Bhagavad Gita. You have the right to perform your prescribed duty, but you're not entitled to the fruits. You'd be detached from the fruits and perform your duty. So duty modifies as our psychophysical nature modifies. All right?
You say indirectly, Krishna lives in duties.
Say it again, it's a little clearer.
Indirectly, does Krishna lives in our duties?
Krishna lives in our duties. Well, the duty is meant to be offered to Krishna. The duty and the results of the duty, both, are to be offered to Krishna. In that sense, he resides. But supposing somebody doesn't do that, supposing somebody doesn't offer it to Krishna, supposing they're a good student, young boy or girl, and they're a good student, but they're not thinking, I'm doing this for Krishna. Does Krishna reside there? Krishna resides in the act of sacrifice. Yajna, sacrifice. Yajna is another name of Krishna, Yajna vai Vishnu. So Krishna resides in the act of sacrifice, not just the duty itself. Okay, he's going to move the microphone around. Do we have some online people? Okay, let's go online. Especially the local people prior to the remote people, right? Okay.
A question from Harry Krishna.
Hey, we heard this Harry Krishna guy before. He asked good questions.
Our goal is permanent, ever increasing happiness through Krishna consciousness. Someone may say, I can be happy by engaging in temporary sense gratification permanently. In other words, they do something that pleases their senses, and once they no longer get pleasure from it, they move on to another. What to say to a person?
I wonder who Harry Krishna is. Do you know who it is? Okay. I was going to guess Krishna Kripa. Okay. The premise is a false premise. The premise that I can do this forever is a false premise. Because nothing is forever in this world. The body and the endeavors and the objects and the senses and the whole shebang. None of it is permanent. So the premise of the question is mistaken. That's my answer. And the alternative is what the result of following such a philosophy is perpetual bondage to illusion, lifetime after lifetime of perpetual bondage to illusion, and mixed with that so-called whatever it is, the buzz of the senses interacting with sense objects is misery. Why is it misery? Because the real happiness within is being covered. That's misery. Supposing I'm asleep, and in my sleep I'm eating an ice cream cone. Yummy. Is that happiness? It's in the mind. And then, later on while I'm eating the ice cream cone, here comes a tiger, and I'm screaming. Ah. And then I wake up. There wasn't a tiger either. It's illusory happiness and distress. So the premise is double mistaken. Next.
Next question from Sarvabhauma Prabhu.
Sarva.
What is the difference between the Gita's Brahma-bhuta platform or nirvana and the Buddhist conception of nirvana?
The Bhagavad Gita doesn't speak of the Brahma-bhuta stage being nirvana. The Brahma-bhuta stage spoken of in Bhagavad Gita is identification with who we are as Brahman, or the tiny fragmental spark of the Supreme, because the very next word in that Brahma-bhuta verse is prasanatma. And in the nirvana stage, there's no prasanatma. In the Buddhist conception of nirvana, it's negation of suffering. Okay, once you've negated suffering, what do? Nothing. That's not the happiness of the soul. That's not prasanatma. So they're worlds apart. So back again to your question. The Brahma-bhuta phrase in Bhagavad Gita is realization of who we are as an eternal spark, part and parcel of the Supreme. And with that comes a happiness, prasanatma. And the Buddhists, they reject the Vedas, so they don't even have a Brahma-bhuta idea. They have a nirvana idea, and their nirvana idea we mentioned. Nirvana is void. That's what the Buddhist idea of nirvana is. It's not Brahma-bhuta. It's nirvana. It's nothing. A state of nothingness. Yummy.
Another question from Sarvabhauma Prabhu.
Okay.
Will a regulated, mindful Buddhist...
What?
Will a regulated and mindful Buddhist have a good chance of becoming a devotee in the next life?
Could you just turn that speaker, let your father do it. Turn the speaker so it's facing me so I can hear her better. The whole speaker, just turn it so the speaker's facing my lousy hearing apparatus over here. No, read it again.
Will a regulated and mindful Buddhist have a good chance of becoming...
The chance to become a devotee is dependent upon the association of a devotee. I've met Buddhists that don't want anything to do with bhakti. I know. And I'm saying the next life is, it depends on receiving association of devotee and saying yes. Then there's a chance. But if they don't receive a association of devotee, then the answer is no. That's it. Okay, in the room, any other discussion? Oh, good. So we take the microphone over there?
When you lose a parent,
Could you take your mask
Oh,
down?
okay.
And one other thing, this is a unidirectional. You have to hold it like this.
Okay.
Ah,
when you lose a parent,
okay.
and you were attached a lot to that parent, and the parent was a very great soul, and it's hard how to overcome that when he's been always there for a long time in your life.
The attachment to a parent who is a great soul who's no longer around. How to deal with that attachment?
Yes.
That's the question?
Yes.
Two things. This is now from Prabhupada. Honor that person by recognizing what the values are that that person held. This is Prabhupada speaking about Gandhi, because he was a Gandhi follower before he met his spiritual master. So to honor a great personality, don't just name a street after them or name a building after them or make a statue for them or eulogize them in that way, but recognize the values that they strongly held and try to manifest in the world those values that they held. In a sangha or a group of persons that live by those values that that person who you look up to. So you serve them. The way to deal with those feelings is service to the soul, because the body's gone, but the soul is not, somewhere else, but the soul isn't gone. And you serve the values that that person held by manifesting them yourself and manifesting them in your capacity in the world, amongst others, the circle of people that you move in and beyond if you can. Service. The mind is thinking of what you don't have, but what you do have is the value that was passed on to you by that person who you look up to. So I'm saying it again, and just because you were pausing, like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. They're values that when you think of that person and the time that you were with that person, there's values that went in, that you're carrying now. So manifest those values as a service to that person. Manifest a sangha of persons who understand and live by those values. Now, likely those values are values that are supported by Scripture. So make the message of the Scripture known to others. And while doing so, eulogize this person that they're emblematic of, representative of that value or those values. I look up to them, and I'm serving the values that they carried. And you'll feel a sense of connection, not physical, but spiritual.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. My question is about detachment.
Detachment, hold it like this.
Sorry. Detachment. I was thinking, one moment we are very attached, to the, whatever it is, particular thing, even in a material sense or in a spiritual sense. The other moment we are detached from that. So how do we steadily attach to I mean, see, for me, when I do the sadhana, when I do my chanting, I was thinking of Krishna and then doing things, and then around that, it's going on. And other moment, if somebody comes and talks to me about, oh, I lost my loved one, I lost my somebody in this pandemic situation, sometimes I get emotional, and then I say that. Uh, at that moment, I do think of Krishna, but that is not that strong attachment with Krishna's feet. Like I go little far away from that. So how do I manage to steadfast to hold Krishna's feet?
Your question is a variation on Krishna Kirtan's question. The mood is different, but the principle is the same. It's the flickering mind goes to the temporary. And with the temporary comes feelings, and most importantly, forgetfulness of who you are and your connection with the source of everything. That's what abhinivesh means, absorption in. Dvitiyam is duality. There you go. You know, his expression was different, but in principle, it's the same. Absorption in the temporary. And, you know, wanting to be perhaps, you know, the enjoyer or the well-wisher of someone, and someone lost another loved one, because it's going on these days, especially in India, like left and right. And you feel something. So there's nothing wrong with feeling that something, but let that, how do you keep that feeling connected to Sat, to the transcendence, to the eternal? It's the same. The answer that I gave him applies to your question. And it's gradual, because we're conditioned souls, and it's not going to happen quickly. The mind's going to keep going to those other places, because that's what conditioned minds do. Then we train, bring the mind back, bring the mind back, bring the mind back, bring the mind back. So like, similar to her question, what do you do when you're feeling the separation from a loved one that you really looked up to and they're no longer around? What do you do? Similar. It's, you know, service. So, and ultimately that service to the loved one that has values that you revere, where do they get those values? Ultimately, where does everything that's transcendental come from? From the source. So it is cultivation. Bhakti is a sort of cultivation, Prabhupada writes. Anukulyena Krishnanushilanam in Sanskrit. It's a cultivation. Okay. One question in the back, and we have something online. You're got the microphone.
Guru Maharaj, continuing on this one, right? We are
Speak slowly and clearly.
Okay.
Consider me half deaf. Be kind to me.
We hear the news, people leaving the bodies, right? And some are close, which we are attached, and some of them are not so close. We heard about them sometime back, or sometime we don't even think about in the life like 10-15 years. We're not even
We don't think about, speak slower.
We don't even think about those persons because they are not in our memory, because they are quite distant relatives or friends or something like that. And once we get this news that they have left, immediately all their memory and everything comes up just like that. We don't even make an effort for that.
I got it.
How is that?
So it's in your photo file. All those pictures and images are in your mind. And the emotions connected with those pictures and images, they're in your mind. And you open the file, and there they are.
We don't even make an effort, it just pops up.
Yeah, that's right. You don't need a password either. It just pops up. It's just, that's how the mind works. It has a vast storage capacity. So what to speak of previous lives? We have those memories too. Just a little sharing, because it's on the personal side, but one family, a group of 4 daughters and 1 son, they all had the same mother, and the mother just left the world. COVID took her away. So the family members are all in great distress, and those close to the family members are also in great distress because their mother was really a fantastic person, very, very special person. And one of those daughters is pregnant, and she's being advised, your emotional disturbance is going to go into the child. So do what you need to do. And so there are things that are going on to do what she needs, because the child isn't going to remember, but the impression is going to be there. And that emotion is going to be triggered sometime later without even knowing what's triggering it. But it's happening now. You know, the mind is very, it's very subtle and very complicated. And there's solutions, but you know, that little child in the womb of the mother doesn't have to try anything. The impressions are going into that child because the emotions of the mother are going into the child. So it's just, etc. The whole world is filled with minds, with people that have impressions and do weird things. Anyway, that's why, how. We're going online.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Uh-huh.
Question from Manjunath.
Okay.
When we have a suffering, say a severe pain, or face an accident, which is not our fault, in that situation, how should we respond? Because what happened to us is karma, and how we respond is free will. So, what is the best response in this situation?
Take care. You do practical things. There's the practical and there's the mental. Do the practical things. Go to a hospital or whatever it is that you need to take care of the medical circumstance that came as a result of the accident. That's on the physical side. And then on the mental, emotional side, put in really simple language, you bow to Krishna. Accidents happen not by accident. And there's something, I find myself in an accident, and there certainly is the immediate cause, but there's the remote cause. And let me live a clean life going forward in time. Making my body, mind, and words aligned with Krishna's message, Krishna's purpose, going forward in time. And whatever has, this devotee that's asking this question can go please to Bhagavatam 10:14-8. Tat tenukampam susamikshamano 10:14-8. And you'll find a nice answer what to do. Okay?
Next question from Manmatananda Das. When we say attachment to Krishna, do we mean attachment to the feet of the blue boy Krishna? Or can it be attachment to any of his characteristics and any of his opulences?
All of the above and more. Attachment to his name. Somebody asked me a question today. In one of the earlier classes, there was this explanation that the name, spiritual name, has spiritual form. So the question is, what's that spiritual form? There's no difference between the form of Krishna with peacock feather holding a flute, etc., and the form of the name. They're the same. They are the same. Any more? We're done? We're done. How about you, our hostess? Anything? You want to? You're good. Okay. She's good. Sanchari, what about you? I thought so.
This question came up when we were in our reading group that we host on Saturdays, and one of the girls was asking, how do we stop developing like a fruitive mentality when we're doing devotional service?
When we're doing devotional service.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good territory to become free from fruitive mentality, because we take our baggage with us from the material into the spiritual. The fruitive mentality is, baggage from the material, and we drag it into the spiritual. But it's an opportunity to become free. And how to is, he gave the answer at the very first question. You offer the result to Krishna. Do your service without attachment to the results of the service, but you want to do it nicely, and you offer that to your capacity to Krishna. I mean, it's like learning cooking, for example. The young person is starting to learn to cook, and it comes out really crummy. So what do? Well, you get a good teacher, and you keep practicing, and you think this is going to be offered to Krishna, so it should be nice. You don't even know what nice is. You just know that it's supposed to be nice. And it becomes, by that practice and devotion, it becomes nice with good teaching and good intention by practice. That's how.
Just as a follow-up to that question as well, in devotional life, sometimes when we practice Krishna consciousness, we have this mentality that starts to develop, at least like I feel it quite often, where we start to have a fruitive mentality in our relationship with Krishna too, and we start to expect certain results because we're devotees or because we're.
Yeah.
So how do we protect against?
Same
thing. Okay. All right.
Okay. Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai.
Jay.
Thank you for providing your computer.